Imagine living in a small, quiet Ohio town. Now, imagine that town being terrorized by a storm of anonymous letters that expose everyone's deepest, darkest secrets. While this campaign of fear turned deadly, and it all started with one man, Ron Gillispie. This is the story of how a poisoned pen became a weapon.
And at the very heart of this whole tragedy is a fatal mistake. You see, when the first letters showed up, just filled with these ugly accusations and threats, a school bus driver named Ron Gillispie just brushed them off. He thought it was some kind of cruel prank. It was a mistake that would end up costing him everything.
The whole story really comes to a head on a dark night, August 1977. On a road he knew like the back of his hand, a pickup truck suddenly veers off and just smashes into a tree. And what looked like a straightforward, tragic accident, well, that was actually just the beginning of a mystery that would last for decades.
Right away, at the crash scene, things just didn't add up. The sheriff ruled Ron's death an accident. Okay, fine. But Ron's own handgun, which they found in the truck, had been fired once. So where was the bullet? And you have to ask, who or what was he shooting at? Right from the start, the official story was just full of holes. To really understand what happened in that crash, we've got to go back a bit to 1976. This is when the terror started. And it didn't start with a bang. It started with the quiet arrival of an envelope in the mailbox of Ron's wife, Mary Gillispie. The message in that letter was just chillingly specific. I mean, this wasn't some vague threat. No, the writer made it crystal clear they were watching the house, that they knew the Gillispies had children. These words were designed for one thing: maximum fear. They turned a family's home from a safe place into a prison. And the harassment, it escalated fast. It started with this secret accusation against Mary, but it quickly turned into a direct death threat against Ron. Then, the writer promised to take the whole thing public. The Gillespies actually fought back. They wrote a letter to someone they suspected. And for a little while, the letters stopped. But it turned out to be just a temporary truce. So the weapon in this case wasn't a gun. It wasn't a knife. It was a poison pen. And this kind of attack, it's pure psychological warfare. It uses that shield of anonymity to just destroy your reputation, create paranoia, and tear apart relationships, all without the writer ever having to show their face. And that brings us right back to that fatal night, August 19th. The letters might have stopped for a bit, but the writer wasn't done. Oh no, their next move is going to be way more direct, and it came right through the telephone line. So, after weeks of nothing, the phone rang. And whatever was said on that call, it pushed Ron Gillispie past his breaking point. In his mind, he was now absolutely certain he knew who the writer was. The call ends, and Ron is just furious. He tells his kids he's going to go confront the person who's been sending the letters. He grabs his gun, gets in his truck, and speeds off into the night. This wasn't a man just going for a drive. This was a man heading for a showdown.
And here we are at the central question of this entire case. The sheriff said it was an accident, a drunk driving incident, but all the suspicious facts surrounding his death have fueled speculation for over 40 years now. Was it really an accident, or was it murder?
So on one hand, you have the official story, a simple, tragic accident. But on the other hand, you have a gun that's been fired, a blood alcohol level that his family says makes no sense, and even accusations that the sheriff himself was covering something up. The pieces just didn't fit.
Point 16. That was Ron's blood alcohol content, well over the legal limit back then. But here's the thing. Those closest to him were absolutely shocked by this. They insisted he just wasn't a heavy drinker. So this number became a huge point of conflict. Was he driven to drink that night, or is there another explanation for that number?
You know, if the story ended with Ron's death, it would be a terrible tragedy. But it didn't end there. Not by a long shot. His death wasn't the conclusion. It was the catalyst. The Circleville Letter-Writer was just getting started. Ron's death set off a chain reaction of fear across the whole town. The writer got bolder, sending letters to all sorts of people. Mary was targeted relentlessly. They put up these awful, obscene signs all along her school bus route. And then, in 1983, it escalated to attempted murder, a booby-trap sign rigged with a loaded pistol. Ron's death had proven this writer was dangerous, and now their reign of terror was in full swing. Now, a suspect was eventually convicted for that booby trap. But even with that person locked up in solitary confinement, the letters kept coming. To this day, the true identity of the Circleville Letter-Writer remains one of Ohio's biggest unsolved mysteries. And it all comes back to that one single pivotal moment. Who made that final phone call? And who was on the other end of the line, luring Ron Gillispie out to his death?